Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe storms which are going to be taking place over the southeastern United States on Sunday and then even into Monday, maybe even lingering into early Tuesday in some areas of Georgia and the Carolinas. We're going to be dealing with some chilly air right behind it and some humid air out in front of it. We're also going to be dealing with potentially another more severe outbreak after this one, just a few hours and days after this first one does pass on. So we're going to be talking about that second one most likely in tomorrow's video or the day after, but we're going to focus mostly on this first event in today's video. We already have a slight risk in effect according to the Storm Prediction Center. So here is what the current National Weather Service page looks like. You can see some red flag warnings in effect for parts of the Dakotas and Montana, as well as for another area in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. We have some wind advisories in effect for southern parts of California, as well as for much of the interior mid-Atlantic and just the Northeast in general, where we have a bunch of wind advisories in the light brown, and then in kind of that golden color is where we're dealing with some of those high wind warnings which are currently in effect. We have some freeze watches for parts of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and then some of the higher elevations in West Virginia. We have in some of the Smoky Mountains some freeze warnings in effect, and some frost advisories for parts of Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana as well. Flood watches are up for parts of coastal and eastern Texas. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 103 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, California, and the low temperature was in Peter Sinks, Utah, where they got down to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. In Winfrey Township, Arkansas, they got 5.91 inches of rainfall yesterday, and that was the highest precipitation report. And the highest snowfall report was 5 miles southwest of Bonito Lake, New Mexico. They got 7 inches of snowfall reported within that area. So here's what the Storm Prediction Center's page looks like. You can see that we have a little area of marginal risk for tomorrow up through the Great Lakes, but that's not really what we're dealing with. The main issue is it's what's down here in parts of Texas and Louisiana. This is going to be the first day, not a big deal in most of these areas. So southern Texas and southern Louisiana, just a marginal risk, but not really too much to worry about. It's more for Sunday into Monday, and then Monday into Tuesday when it does start to ramp up a little bit more. We have a slight risk of severe weather up for Texas, Louisiana, and much of Mississippi, even some of the surrounding areas as well. They don't have anything on the day 4 outlook which concerns the southeast, but I would not be surprised at all if they extend that marginal risk at least, and I think there is even a fairly good shot that northern Georgia and northern Alabama might even get added on into that slight risk. If I were in the Storm Prediction Center, that personally is what I would have done in that scenario, but we'll have to see what they do in the next couple of days as they issue their updated outlooks. Here's what the NAM model is showing with this event, and we're going to kind of time this out for you guys. So zoomed in on the southeast here, you can see on the left-hand side of your screen a bit of stormy activity in parts of eastern Texas and western Louisiana. Not too intense just yet, but now you're starting to see a little bit more development by Sunday morning. This is around 7 in the morning Eastern time, and you can see that we have, or Central time actually, and we're dealing with that line of storms through southeasternmost Texas, about to cross over into Louisiana, according to this model. Here to be by 10 in the morning Central Time. Here's by that would be 10 in the morning, and this is around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and you're dealing with more of these storms continuing to line up through Mississippi and Louisiana. They do weaken a little bit, and as we continue and go through the day on Sunday, they still are around the same type of intensity. So over central Mississippi, southern Louisiana, dealing with some of those intense storms, especially with this outbreak that's going to be happening on the back side of this for mainly mid and early parts of next week. That's gonna be mainly the bigger threat, I think, because we have much higher dew points, we have much higher amounts of CAPE, and we also have just higher temperatures in general. So all of the ingredients in the atmosphere are going to be well primed for this second outbreak, which we're going to talk about in tomorrow's video or maybe the day after, depending on how this system ends up playing out. But depending on how that does end up happening, that could be a lot more intense than what we're dealing within this first one. Switching over to the RGM model, just because the NAM model doesn't go out that far. You can see that those storms continue on through southern Alabama, maybe even a few clusters of storms near Tennessee and Mississippi, and then they're going to kind of stall out a little bit. So this is by Monday early in the morning. They are moving, I would say probably about 25 miles per hour to the east, so really a slow moving type of system once it stalls out here. And the reason that is because we have a big high pressure to the east. So that's going around the coastal Carolinas and just spinning around like this. So we're dealing with all that warm air being pulled up to further east of the system, but it also brings in a lot of dry air. So I think if you live right along the coast, you might actually avoid most of the storminess just because you have that high pressure out east of the Bahamas. But if you live a little bit interior, you're going to kind of feel some of the weakening effects of that high pressure, and you will actually see some of those storms, especially as you get into interior Georgia, parts of Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi. So all those areas that are further inland might be dealing with some sort of rain or stormy activity. This is by Monday early in the morning. Here's by Monday in the later morning hours. So this is around 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning Eastern time, and we're dealing with these storms rolling on through Georgia and Alabama still, but again, they pretty much stalled out, not moving at such a rapid pace as they were before, and you can see pretty much no change in the actual direction, and that is because of that high pressure out to the east, like we just talked about, which is again spinning away further east of there, bringing in all that dry air, and is basically creating a shield around the coastal areas. So those areas again will probably stay fairly dry, might get hit by a little bit of rainfall, but for the most part, if you live along the coast, it does look like it's going to be a nice weekend, even a nice start to the week potentially, and it still is stalling out here. Even at the end of the RGM model run, you can still see some of these storms right around the same area. So we might have some flooding concerns if this does end up panning out or just kind of stays over one area, and that is a big concern with this type of storm system. So here are the high temperatures just to give you an idea, and this is for Sunday, much higher, especially as you get further to the east, where you have 80 plus degree temperatures expected through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and pretty much the entire state of Florida as well. So all of these areas dealing with those warm temperatures, even up into the 90s in parts of southern Georgia. So definitely warm enough in many of these areas. Here's for Monday, and you can see that it is above 80 for pretty much the entire coast area, and then also some of these areas further to the west. We do have a little bit of a cutout of chillier air in through Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and some of the areas further to the north, but it's still in the upper 70s. Really nothing that you can complain about too much, considering that we are still in early May, so we still do have a couple months before we officially reach the summer months. Here would be the dew points, and as you can see, we have those higher dew points for Sunday early afternoon in parts of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. So those are the areas that are going to be hit with those storms at first, and then as we move this forward a little bit more, you're going to see that the dew points, especially over parts of Georgia and Alabama, are much higher as it's starting to roll through those areas. And by the way, this is just previewing with that next type of storm system that we're going to see for later on in the week that could be a little bit more severe. We already have dew points that are getting fairly high to the west of there, even up into the mid 70s. So we're already seeing the initial signs of potentially a big storm, and we're going to have again more updates on that in the next couple of videos. Here's the CAPE values, the convective available potential energy. You can see we have CAPE values over 500 up to 1,500 joules per kilogram, so fairly high as you get from Mississippi westward, where we do have ample amounts of CAPE. And then as you can see for Monday, the storms by this point are right here, and those CAPE values are exceeding 2,000 in some of these areas, but for the most part they're between 1,500 and 2,500, so definitely well above what you would need to get a decent thunderstorm. Here's the maximum wind gust for this time period, which goes from today all the way until Tuesday, and this kind of just gives you an idea of what some of these individual bands of storms could bring. In terms of knots, this is in knots, so you will have to convert that to miles per hour, but for example, around 35 knots, that's around 42, 43, 44 miles per hour. So generally they're going to see winds gusting between about 40 and maybe 50 miles per hour in some of the worst bands of rainfall and heavy winds. So really a fairly windy event. It's not going to be a overly windy event. We're not going to be seeing any gusts, most likely up to 70 or 80, but it will be more of a consistent type of wind where because the storms are going to be staying over your area for such a long time period as they kind of stall out, it will be more of the consistency that's going to be the issue, especially if you get some of that water on the ground and you get a little bit more of a muddy ground. That could upset some of the trees, especially the smaller ones, and unfortunately we might be dealing with a few trees here and there that do go down just because of all the rainfall that's kind of unsettling all the soil. That could definitely cause some issues. And here's the precipitable water, by the way, which is showing you how much water and just moisture is in the atmosphere at any one given point. And you can see that we have in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, even up to 2 inches of precipitable water, which is a fairly high amount. And then if you look at for Monday night, when the storms are in Georgia, Alabama, and even into South Carolina, we have precipitable water amounts that are all above 1.5 inches of precipitable water. So that's well above what you would need to typically support any sort of storm system, especially any sort of severe storm system. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.